Okay, the clock has struck noon. So I think everybody's ready to get started, and I think we'll jump right in and let anybody else who's joining in the next few minutes join us as they can. Hello, everybody who is in the room with us right now. Thank you so much for joining for today's online information session about the Sewer Extension South project. We're going to get started with a presentation first in just a few moments, but I just want to cover off a few housekeeping items before we dive in. First, by way of introductions, my name is Colleen Dane, and I'm going to be helping as facilitator today. So my job is to help make this piece run smoothly in the Q&A session as well. And supporting me today is Ingrid Sly with the CBRD communications team, who will help make sure that the technical piece continues to move forward well. Presenting for us today, we have Area A Director Daniel Arbour, who will be speaking first, and then Chief Administrative Officer for the CBRD, Russell Dyson. And as you can see on your screen, we have a number of other panelists here who can help address any questions that you might raise in the second half of it. So we have Mark Rutten, General Manager of Engineering Services, Alana Mullally, the General Manager of Planning and Development Services. We have Chris LaRose, Manager of Water and Wastewater, Derry Monteith, the Manager of Liquid Waste Planning, and Nancy Clements with Island Health here as well. So we have lots of people online to be able to help answer any questions you have, and we look forward to doing that. We expect the presentation will take about 20 minutes, and then the second half of our hour with you will be focused on the Q&A. And just to kind of give a quick run through about that process for when we get there, in the webinar format that we're using today, you can share a question by clicking on the Q&A icon that you find in the bottom black bar across your screen. So if you open it up, you can see the question window and the smaller window where you can type in questions to post. We will tackle this list after our presentation, but you can drop those questions in at any time, beginning now. If you want to make your question anonymous, just click the little box beside the question window before you post it, and then it'll be displayed as an anonymous question. If someone has posted a question that you like or think is important or also have, you can upvote it by clicking the little thumbs up underneath it, and that helps us see questions that are a priority from the group. We do intend to get to every question today, but in the case that we run out of time, any remaining questions will be responded to and posted to the project webpage, which is comoxvalleyrd.ca/sewer extension. And I'll share a slide a little bit later on with that on display so that you can make note of it. We are recording this session and it will be posted to the website. So just want everybody to be aware of that before we get rolling. And finally, if you are phoning in today, and I do see a couple phone numbers in there, and would like to raise a question, you can hit *9, and that gives us an indication that you've raised your hand. And then we will call on you by the last 4 digits of your phone number so that you know who we're asking to speak, and you'll be able to present your question to the team. If you're having any technical questions today, please feel free to add them to the chat. So that's another one of the icons along that bottom black bar of your screen. And Ingrid will be able to help address any questions you have about the technical side of participating in this session today. So with that, I think we will get rolling to make the most of our time with the experts here on the call today. Thanks again to everybody who was able to make the time to join us for this lunch hour. And with that, I'm going to hand the mic over to Director Arbour for your comments. Director Arbour.
Thank you, Colleen. And yes, welcome to everybody in Union Bay and Royston. And if you're not from those two communities, thanks for the interest and for joining us. I want to definitely recognize that we're having this meeting in the traditional unceded territory of the Comox First Nation, who happen to be a major partner on this initiative. Obviously, we are talking about the future of sewage and septic in the area today, a perennial topic, I believe, for the communities. We have a great presentation coming up. I think at the town hall last month and before that, I said that staff was coming up with a significant update for the communities. And here we are today and there'll be another opportunity in person in the next couple of days. So without further ado, I'll pass it to our CAO, I think, who's going to present the bulk of the presentation, and hope everyone enjoys the session. Over to you, Russell.
Thank you very much, Director Arbour. And Colleen, could I just confirm that my screen is being shared and you can see the opening slide?
Yeah, it looks great, Russell. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. And I just wish to really express my appreciation for everybody joining us today. With over 100 people registered, it's definitely got your interest. And this is the beginning of a process. This is the beginning of a conversation with you, the community, on what I think is a very good opportunity for us to address the matter of sewage treatment within your area. So my name is Russell Dyson, and I am the Chief Administrative Officer of the Comox Valley Regional District. But I'm blessed with a staff that are here to support me in presenting this information to you. They've helped to bring it forward and in my presentation, and will be here also to answer any of the questions that you may have. But as I say, this is the beginning of a process, and we hope to engage with you and provide you with more information on this opportunity as time goes on. The advantage of the pandemic, one of the things that it has given to us, is this format of public information meetings. We didn't do this before, and this is great because everybody gets to see the questions. The questions are answered for everybody to see, and then this seminar will then be available on the internet, so you can provide it to your friends, family, and other members that are interested to watch at a later time. But fortunately, we're also going to have an open house on Thursday for those that appreciate the one-on-one, and we look forward to seeing you there. Wastewater management has been a regular topic for Royston and Union Bay over the years. I'm going to share with you a series of 9 slides that tell you a little bit about the history and where we are today. Bringing a sewer service to the communities is a priority because of key overlapping factors in the area. For those who are joining this conversation recently, here's a refresher on why a community sewer service is an important priority to the area. Poor conditions for septic systems. Royston and Union Bay are historic communities, surveyed and developed at the turn of the previous century, developed over time with high density and small lot sizes. These conditions create a greater risk for on-site treatment systems that we currently rely on. A risk to Bain Sound. Bain Sound is a jewel. It is a unique marine area and coastline within our regional district. It supports well over 50% of the BC's shellfish industry. Poorly functioning systems can pose an environmental health and public safety risk to this environment. Along with environmental constraints from a high water table and poor soil conditions, many septic systems require regular maintenance and eventually replacement. They have a shelf life. I know personally, I've lived in properties all my life that have relied on septic systems, and I know what a headache that they can be. The area has an existing population that would benefit from sewer servicing, and this has been explored over time. Sewer servicing will provide greater opportunity for residents constrained by septic fields on their property. This is why it was designated as a core settlement area in the CVRD's regional growth strategy. This provides a bit of history over time and some of the activities that have taken place as early as 1979 to explore sewer servicing within this area. There have been a variety of studies and processes, all of which have provided us with information that is very helpful even for today. The community has undertaken what is referred to as a liquid waste management plan, which is an extensive process requiring technical expertise and members of your community. I would just like to acknowledge some of the members of your community: Susan Culger, Bridget Walters, Claudette Flaus, Alan Jones, Anne Alcock, and alternates Bruce Livesey and Rod Smith, who have previously been part of the public engagement process of our liquid waste management planning. And there are many of you others within our community that have helped us along the way. So there's been a long history. There's been referendums previously on proposed alternatives. Some of them have failed and some of them have succeeded. Some of them were dependent on grant funding, and unfortunately that did not come through. Most recently, the regional district did receive grant funding, and a referendum took place in 2016. But at that time, what was proposed is an independent treatment facility with an outfall in Bain Sound and partnership with the village of Cumberland. The partnership fell through with Cumberland, and the costs were just too much for the rest of the community. Furthermore, without social license to place an outfall within Bain Sound, we were looking at the cost of transporting through conveyance lines treated effluent all the way to our treatment facility just north of Willamar Bluff. So it was far too costly. Also, the community was concerned. It was a 3P project, meaning a public-private partnership. There were some in the community that would rather see this be provided by employees of the regional district. And also we heard numerous times the concerns about Bain Sound and an outfall within that area. So we've come a long way. Since the failure of that referendum, we've tried to hang on to the grant funding, but that was not possible. Subsequently, we have made additional applications for funding. And today we want to talk to you about an option that is available to us to again provide an application for funding that is available in the new year. While there is a lot of information on this slide, this will be available on our website so you can look through it, and it will be a poster board at our upcoming meeting. So if you have any questions about it, by all means, we'll be there to answer your questions. But what I mean to inform you about, there's been a lot of work done in the past on a technical basis and consulting with the community on this matter. So what has changed since our previous referendum, its failure? We have been working hard to find a solution. The Comox Valley Sewer Service is a system that provides sewer treatment to the City of Courtenay and the town of Comox, as well as Comox First Nations IR number 1 and Department of National Defence. It has been administered by the Sewage Commission. It has never previously been available to service the rural areas. It has been provided solely for the benefiters of that system and managed accordingly. In 2018, the Comox Valley Sewage Commission supported a request by the regional district to consider electoral area and to analyze the technical and regulatory and financial impacts of extending their sewer system to electoral area A, south to Royston. There were important questions to ask. Of course, the Sewage Commission did want to see their ability for connections to be compromised from a new area and to ensure that there would be a fair and equitable way and system moving forward to pay for this. And there was. The result is, following review of the assessment, the Sewage Commission agreed to receive untreated wastewater from Royston, Union Bay, and Comox First Nations Southlands. And later I'll provide you a map which sort of indicates which these service areas are. This means that Union Bay and Royston can connect into the Comox sewer system, accessing the Comox Valley's Water Pollution Control Center treatment plant and the existing discharge location outside of Bain Sound. Residents, you now have the availability of a treatment plant and outfall. What is required now is the collection and conveyance system to connect to the Courtenay pump station. With the new option of connecting to the Comox Valley Sewer Service, the CVRD will partner with Comox First Nations and potentially Union Bay Estates. We did so in an application for grant funding previously, and as I mentioned, unfortunately, that was not successful. But we have to remember that came on the heels of a successful water treatment plant project where the regional district received over $70 million in funding. Now that additional monies have been provided throughout the province on a more equitable basis, this third intake of grant funding is far more suited to us and we're far more likely for success. A little bit about the Comox Valley sewer system that I speak of. The Sewage Commission's decision to receive wastewater from Area A is unprecedented. I'm sorry, that word has been used a lot this year. I should have said something else, but this is an unprecedented decision. Connection to municipal services has before only been available to those within municipal boundaries. So a little bit more about the Comox Valley sewer system. It currently services over 40,000 people in Courtenay and Comox, and they are responsible for the connection and the collection systems within their own communities. The regional district takes over when it comes to the larger pump stations, such as the Comox pump station along Dyke Road, the pump station at Jane Place in the town of Comox, and a pump station for the Department of National Defence. Those pump stations then pump the untreated effluent through large conveyance mains to our treatment works just north of Willamar Bluff. We undertake 4 steps of treatment of that sewage before it is discharged to the marine environment, again, off Cape Lazo, saving the potential impacts to Bain Sound. High quality treated wastewater is released via this outfall beyond Cape Lazo at a depth of 60 meters or 195 feet. The CVRD sees some key benefits to connecting Royston and Union Bay into the service, including Residents will not have to pay for the construction and operation of a new treatment plant. Instead, operation costs are distributed over a larger population, so we share in the burden moving forward. We don't have to go through the regulatory requirements of approvals or otherwise for an outfall or a new treatment facility. You would have access to a fully permitted wastewater treatment plant and discharge. Using the LASO discharge removes the need for discharging into Bain Sound, which the community has told us in the past is unacceptable. Finally, the treatment plant offers high quality treatment with dedicated professionals in place to manage it. Recent sewer planning for the service also includes plans to extend ultraviolet protection to these treatment works in coming years. So now a little bit about the analysis of septic systems versus sewer. Why sewer over septic? Along with poor ground conditions and high density of housing in Royston Union Bay, there are additional reasons for sewer services to be pursued. Septic systems require regular maintenance to ensure they have continued function properly, and homeowners are legally responsible for ensuring their systems are maintained largely on their own. Systems that are improperly sited or installed, undersized or poorly maintained can fail, polluting local streams, groundwater, Bain Sound, and posing a health risk to the community. Often, and I can speak for myself, you may not be aware of these because the conditions that note a failure may not be showing up on your own property or even to your knowledge or awareness. If a health hazard exists or is likely to be caused, Island Health has the authority to hold those that are responsible liable. Replacement of these systems can be expensive. The costs range from $15,000 to over $50,000 for more challenging sites. And certainly smaller properties may be prone or may be considered as some of those more challenging sites. Action is required. Doing nothing to address these challenges is no longer an option. Without regional sewer, regulatory tools may be used or imposed on you in the future to ensure that proper septic system maintenance will be required. The treatment plant. It offers an existing municipal system that exceeds regulatory requirements for discharge to open marine waters. All wastewater entering the plant passes through the secondary biological treatment. Planned upgrades to the treatment process for the facility will include, as I mentioned, UV disinfection, and will ensure there's capacity for all of our communities to be part of the system. And in turn, all the communities participate together in the costs and share those burdens, as opposed to an individual independent treatment plant being the responsibility of one area or the other. Now a little bit about the potential service area. First, I'd like to just highlight, if you can see my cursor in green, this represents the boundaries of the Comox and West Courtenay areas. Of course, those communities extend further to the west than is shown on the slide. Our treatment works include a siphon across the river, the pump station, IR number 1, conveyance lines that currently go along the foreshore to our treatment plant. We are currently in the midst of replacing these conveyance lines along the foreshore and have plans prepared to install new conveyance lines upland to remove the threat of the Willamar Bluffs and other potential failures. So there's a lot of work going into the system at this time. When we speak of a treatment, or pardon me, the service area for your communities, we consider the orange areas. The communities of Royston, the Kilmarnock subdivision and land surrounding that, Union Bay Major, and then of course there's the opportunity to work with our partners. The Comox First Nation is in the midst of treaty negotiations, which may result in them acquiring what is referred to as the KFN treaty lands or the Southlands, a large block of area that will be under their control and development. The regional district has partnered with KFN with respect to the provision of water. They were part of our water treatment project, and soon water mains will be providing water to the development of this area. They are most interested in partnering us with respect to sewer as well. And then there's the potential for us to work with Union Bay Estates. Union Bay Estates is a community that may have up to 3,000 doors. Working cooperatively, the three of us can result in a better, more efficient system that benefits all the communities. And that's the principle behind this. So what's next? At this time, we're reaching out to you as an initial phase of communications with the community. We have an opportunity to apply for federal and provincial grant funding with a deadline of an application to be made in January of this next year, 2022. We are putting together the analysis of what that might cost and what the service area might be or otherwise, and developing those details, which we We will share with our electoral area directors, and they will ultimately advise on the application to be made. We hope to hear from you today in terms of the questions that you may have to help inform us of this application, but that's just the start. Over the next year, we will work with you on the details of the potential costs for different scenarios and what that might look like. Public engagement will continue with you through the spring and summer. In order to establish a service area, in order to raise the money to undertake any of these works from you, the existing residents, we need your authority. We need to go to you in the state of a referendum or other process to enable that to happen. So you will have a say. At this time, we just want to hear that this is a project of interest to you. It is worth exploring for you, and what the questions may be so that we can answer those over the time. But I believe this is a really golden opportunity for you. I think that given recent circumstances and the things that have transpired across our province and across our country, opportunities for this level of grant funding for these kind of projects might not necessarily be available to us anymore. Having said that, we know that each time that we look at the analysis and we look at these opportunities, the costs are increasing over time. Costs are increasing as a result of labor, equipment, materials, all costing more regulatory requirements or otherwise. We are dedicated to try and find a solution for you, the communities of Union Bay, Royston, Kilmarnock, and others in the south, that is reasonable. We know it has to be in order for you to accept this. So we're going to undertake more analysis, more evaluation, and be working with you. And one last slide, I'll just talk about some of the potential questions you may have, and we'll be open to many more of your questions in this and other formats over the next days. But I imagine you're wondering, how much will this cost? We are undertaking the required analysis and evaluating the various options to better understanding the impact to you as the residents. As you can imagine, at this time, infrastructure projects are subject to many complex cost factors. Derry Monteith is working with our engineering consultants to ensure that we thoroughly understand what the potential costs are for different scenarios. Those costs will be shared with you in the months to come. They will have to be prepared in order for a legitimate application to go forward for grant funding. And what does this mean for Union Bay Estates and their plans? The Comox Valley Regional District has a master development agreement with Union Bay Estates. That master development agreement requires a sewer solution for the proposed development that has the ability to expand to provide capacity for the other areas. Should a connection to the Comox Valley sewer system proceed, it would remove the construction of a standalone system treatment works for their development. And it would provide the long-term solution that we could both collaborate on. There will be the opportunity to share the cost burden with a comparable amenity provided as contemplated in the MDA. So what we speak of in this concept today is in keeping with that MDA. Will there be options for opting out if sewer service goes ahead? If a service area is established, homeowners will be required to connect to the service in order to ensure cost efficiency and to meet the environmental safety goals of the project. Opting out will not be an option for those within the service area if it is established, but again, a service area requires your assent before it is established. So those details will be worked out, and we are always mindful that these cost burdens are a great concern of you, and we will look for avenues or ways or means that make it affordable for you. And then finally, what happens if this doesn't proceed? Action is needed on wastewater management given conditions in this area. Should sewer planning not proceed in a timely fashion, the CVRD will be looking to land use planning tools and new regulations to ensure environmental and health risks aren't made worse. This could include work with the province and Island Health on enhanced septic regulatory measures, changes to zoning, or implementation of land use management tools to diminish risks. Cost and complexity of these projects is increasing, and it can be expected that senior grant opportunities will be pursuing other local government initiatives in the future. That concludes my presentation. Thank you for listening. Again, this will be available for you, your friends and neighbors, should they wish to witness it or otherwise. And I'll now pass it on to Colleen, and she'll open up to your questions, and me and the other staff will be available to answer them. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Russell. That was a really helpful overview, and you're right, questions are already starting to pop in over that presentation. So we'll dive into those in just a moment. I just want to remind people that if you have a question, you can click the Q&A icon in your bottom black bar to be able to open the Q&A window, and that's where you can both see the questions that have already been posted and also add any more of your own. If you're dialing in today by phone, you can hit *9, and that gives us an indication that you've raised your hand to speak, and we'll call on you when it is your turn. So with that, our first couple questions kind of came in during presentation, Russell, but I think they're probably going to be top of mind for people, so I am going to revisit them. The first one was about the cost. So can you give an idea about how much this is going to actually cost each homeowner?
Great, thank you for the question. As I mentioned, we're undertaking the analysis, and Derry is the lead on that. I'll just refer to Derry, and she can explain to you what analysis is being undertaken and when we can expect to be able to share these numbers with you.
Thank you, Russell. Yeah, so we are currently undertaking analysis, getting updated costs, doing some conceptual design work, as well as looking at options for cost sharing with our project partners, and how much we may be applying for in this upcoming grant funding. And all of those things really affect the cost for residents. So once we know the outcome of those different factors, we'll be presenting to you some cost scenarios for consideration.
Great, thank you. And then another one that did come up through the presentation, but just to recircle back on it, the question is, will homeowners get to vote on the project? And maybe it's an opportunity to explain the assent process and the options there. Russell, I'll start with you on that. Yeah.
Thanks very much. Yes, in order for us to establish a service area that provides this service to existing residents, there's really one of three ways, right? The first way is a referendum. The second way is an alternative approval process, but I think Director Arbour would probably agree that this is a matter that is of too much, at least this is what I've heard to date, too much concern, too big of an issue to undertake an alternative approval process. So probably the political preference is to do a referendum, but I have to tell you, the alternative approval process is always there as an option. And then the third way is through a liquid waste management planning process. The regional district has done some work on a liquid waste management plan in the past. And basically what that does is it is such a comprehensive process that involves community dialogue and the involvement of experts or otherwise, that in the end, it is, if approved by the Ministry of Environment, it provides the regulatory authority for the borrowing and for the establishment of the service areas. But a liquid waste management planning is a 2 to 3 year process at minimum. So it is a very lengthy process, but those are the three options available in terms of getting the approval. The grant application, Derry has been in contact with the administrators of the grant, and the grant application, to be successful, they would want us to undertake some level of assurance to the province that there is the approval of the elected the people within the next year or so. They would not issue a grant or see this as a favorable project unless we were able to do that. So I think a liquid waste management plan at this time is not an option, and really you're really looking at some form of referendum. So a vote of those that would be in the service area to say yes or no as to whether they approve of being in the service area, and any level of borrowing that would be required in order to undertake the project.
Great, thank you. The next question asks about the comment made about future regulatory requirements that might be required in the area. And so it asks whether or not there is a regulatory driver to the CBRD that could push this transition to a provided service. I assume that's assuming that the process laid out as the kind of preferred approach is unsuccessful.
Yeah, so I think I understand the question. The potential of regulation can come from any number of places. It is Island Health, and Nancy Clements is here representing Island Health. They are the ones responsible now for approving septic systems, for undertaking any monitoring or undertaking any actions in the event that there is a failure. And Nancy, you can correct me or elaborate a little further once I provide a little bit more information here. The other thing is there's a variety of different agencies that have an interest in water quality or otherwise. The Ministry of Agriculture, who represents the shellfish industry, the Ministry of Environment, they are the ones that are sort of responsible for the general state of the environment, and also are the ones that regulate larger systems, communal septic systems. And then there has been an ongoing dialogue at the regional district amongst the electoral area directors in the consideration as to whether there might be an additional role of the regional district. There is a lot of information about failing system broadly across the entire regional district, not just within your local area. Those are expressed by concerns of residents and others that have concerns that there is no means to ensure that people are undertaking the required maintenance of their septic systems. We've done a lot in terms of educating, providing information to you. It's available at our website. There's been workshops or otherwise. It's always preferable to undertake the carrot approach, but it could be possible that the regional district could adopt regulations and standards that would require regular pumping, require some inspection or otherwise proof of inspection, any number of things to elevate the maintenance and the accountability that is provided to the operation of septic fields. So I hope that answers the question. That does, as I understood the question to be.
It does. That does, I believe, address it. But if we have missed a key point, please feel free to add it. And Nancy, did you have anything else you wanted to add before we moved on from that one?
No, I think Russell covered it fairly well.
Great. Okay. So the next question is a forward-looking one. If electoral approval, is obtained, is there a timeline at this point for construction?
Yes, a great question for Derry to answer too, because she's put her mind to just the various different aspects and processes that would be needed to put this in place. So Derry.
Yeah, so if elector approval is obtained and if we are able to receive grant funding for the project, the grant program specifies that construction needs to be completed by 2026. So that's about a 4-year timeline.
And not an unrealistic timeline for all the steps that are required in terms of detailed design, procurement, any regulatory approvals, undertaking the work or otherwise. So probably a pretty realistic in terms of the physical things that would need to be done from now until it is commissioned.
Right. Okay, and then another next question is about whether or not there is at this point a plan B should the January 2022 grant application not be successful.
Well, I would like to call up the slide, and I think we're on plan F right now. So it's the question is there a plan G? Because there have been many plans before, right? And we just haven't got there. So we really are on a subsequent plan. But I think that there are various different options in terms of the financing of this. To what extent can we work in a partnership with KFN and Union Bay Estates and working with them without grant funding? Is there still a reasonable proposal that is cost effective for the residents? If with no grant, that's the analysis that we'll undertake. And those are the things that we will look at and work with you as a community to explore those with you. At this time, in terms of grant opportunities, we do not see any other grants on the horizon from the federal or provincial government that have been announced at this time that are of a similar nature. And as I said to you before, things have changed over the last month. The emphasis on government is very much going to be on climate mitigation and helping to shore up failing dikes and other systems. And we can expect that to be a reality, and there's only a limited amount of funding. That's not to say that what we are doing here doesn't have potential benefits in terms of climate change or otherwise, but it's not the sole focus of this project, and there will be many other demands. So I hope that answers the question.
I think it does a good job of it. Thank you. We have an upvoted question, so I'm just going to go back to it. And the question is, has Union Bay Estates agreed to joining this project?
We continue to work with Union Bay Estates, and they see the benefit of this being a long-term solution that meets their needs. We are working with them to evaluate the cost implications and the specifics of the project, and we'll work with them on that to confirm that before the grant application is made. Having them on board and supporting the grant application would be important for that process and be an important ticking the box in terms of one of the things we want to demonstrate to the province. So I really appreciate the dialogue that we've had with Union Bay Estates on this matter. They see the benefit and have demonstrated that they want to work with us.
And another one that's gotten a few thumbs up to make it a priority: would existing septic fields have to be dismantled or decommissioned? And if so, are those costs a part of the analysis that's ongoing at this point?
That is a question that I cannot answer, and it may be something for Nancy or Derry to give some consideration to. Maybe first we'll go to Nancy, who might be familiar with what's happened in other jurisdictions.
Yeah, typically when you have a situation like this where you have an existing on-site sewage disposal system and you're connecting to community sewer, you do need to decommission that infrastructure. And what would be entailed would be having the existing tank pumped out. And then you can, typically what people would do is decommission the tank. So they would have a machine come, break up the tank in place to make sure that it no longer will hold water, and then just backfill it, and just leave that infrastructure in the ground, because that's the least burdensome as far as cost goes. If you want to have that infrastructure removed, obviously there's a little bit more cost attached to that. So you're looking at a pump out fee, plus a backhoe time to, decommission and break up that tank and cap off the pipe, and then some plumbing to connect to the new system. As for cost for that, I don't even know if I'd want to ballpark that. That's something I could probably work with Derry on.
And another question related to current septic systems. So the question is, some landowners have recently installed new septic systems, so they've put out that cost fairly recently. In some cases as a result of the last referendum failure. So is there accommodation that can be made for those landowners with respect to the cost mitigation or credits to address that recent work?
Okay. Mark Rutten, would you be able to answer that question or put your mind to that?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so this question is something that we have talked about internally. We certainly understand that people have upgraded their septic systems. That those refurbishments, they don't stop, because we have a failed referendum or our project can't move forward. So there's a couple of factors that we're considering. I mean, it is important for everyone to participate in the new service if it was to be successful. And that's important because, by participating, revenue is generated for the service, and that pays for the costs of the service and the cost of debt. So we definitely need everyone to participate. And we'll look at options for people that have just installed the new system. So we don't have any solutions kind of worked out and ready to present to you today, but we definitely understand those factors and how important it is to people, especially with those new systems. So we'll be looking at that as part of the project.
Great. A question looking at the map from one resident who lives on Has Road, which is just northwest of the Marine Drive Shipwrecks area. Right now it's shown and labeled as West Courtney. So the question is, are they included in the proposed service area? Or does the CVRD suggest that they obtain the service as by being amalgamated with the city of Courtney?
I saw you shaking your head, Alana. Do you know where the property is? And would you be able to answer that question?
Maybe I'm nodding my head because I live in the area. So I'm thinking, oh yeah, I walk there. But that is, I guess what I would just say is certainly defer to Mark and Derry on this one, but part of Derry's work is defining that service area. So what is going to make sense in those various scenarios about which properties are included. And certainly Haas Road is further north of the key area that Derry's been looking at. But certainly I wouldn't want to dismiss it today. Let Derry and Mark do that work to draw out some scenarios, and then we can give you a more definitive answer in the new year.
And thanks very much, Alana. And for the individual that asked the question, if you have some information to share with us or some thoughts on what would be appropriate or not, please pass those along in an email or letter to Derry or otherwise to help her undertake this assessment or this work. I see Director Arbor has his hand up.
Dr. Arbor?
Thanks. I thought I would just comment on the aspect of the question around the amalgamation into Courtney. So while Royston is identified in the regional growth strategy as a potential area of amalgamation, I can confirm that currently there is no political appetite, it seems, in the valley for municipal extensions. I know there has been some in the past, but as far as I'm aware, unless staff knows otherwise, there is nothing in the works currently.
Great, thank you. I had done a few of the bumped up questions and I want to just get back down so I can get to a few of the specific questions as well that people had shared earlier. So the first one is referencing the map that you shared, Russell, on slide 7. And that proposed, it looks like, he says, the proposed sewer extension would be inland as opposed to on the foreshore. Does that mean that it would not be a gravity system and would require pumping for those along the foreshore? Is that correct?
Great question for Derry to answer.
Yeah, so there is a proposed force main, a pressurized main along the highway. However, there will be local collection systems installed for each kind of neighborhood that would potentially pump up to that system. We still haven't done kind of the detailed design of the collection system yet. So we're currently working off a collection or a conceptual design of a gravity system that has really formed the basis of our planning to date. But we will really be working through those details and presenting options in kind of the coming months ahead.
Great. There's a couple cost questions coming up, so I'm going to put a few of them together. The first one is maybe just a bit of a clarification that if this is approved, there will require to be a tax increase for people in the area. And then perhaps some information about what portion of the cost for the project overall would be passed on to homeowners for this work.
So when this, I'm going to speak generally, when the regional district establishes a service area, regardless whether sewer, water, or otherwise, it is only those properties within the sewer or service area that pay the costs. And the other thing is that our services must be funded independently. So they have to, the service area, those that are benefiting from the service are the ones that have to pay for the cost. So we can't take money from our recreation service and use it to pay for sewer or otherwise. We have over 100 services and each one has a separate and distinct budget and separate and distinct inputs and outputs in terms of revenues and expenditures. How we can help or how we can assist with the costs of those individuals is through the grant funding opportunities. And so the province, through this particular program, does look upon those communities favorably that are solving problems and where the impact to existing homeowners is just too much financially. So this is a very favorable circumstance for us to make this application and to receive the funding. Not guaranteed, but these are the kinds of projects where the province wants to help. Big impact on helping the environment and all these other things, and helping to alleviate the costs of homeowners that might not be able to do this otherwise. When it comes to the capital costs of this project, we would be borrowing the monies for that project, other than what is paid for through the grant funding. We borrow money through the Municipal Finance Authority. And the advantage to that is it's a pooling of all the communities across British Columbia to give us very favorable rates in terms of the interests that we provide, a lot of flexibility in terms of the duration and length and time, so that generally our principle is that we try to make the loan last well in advance of the length or time or the lifespan of the infrastructure. So you're going to pay it off in a reasonable amount of time. It's going to provide for reasonable payments on an annual basis, relatively low interest rates from the Municipal Finance Authority, and that's generally the way that we go about the borrowing. And then if this service area is going to be extended to include the Union Bay Estates and the KFN's lands as well, those are just other partners that come to the table to help pay for the size of those, the pipes and the pump stations and things that will otherwise be required. So try and find partnerships wherever possible, maybe even with the City of Courtenay, because some of the works will be going through there. If there's a way or means for the City of Courtenay to benefit from the conveyance works that are required for you, and then they contribute to this too, there's a fourth partner. So I hope that answers the questions. So the service area has to pay for the costs. We look at borrowing through the Municipal Finance Authority for capital costs. And then one other thing is the operating costs, the regular costs of the operation and maintenance. You would be charged the same as a resident within the town of Comox or City of Courtenay in terms of what their contribution is to the ongoing operation and maintenance of the conveyance lines and the treatment works.
And just because we're on the cost per resident topic, I'm going to add in another one, which is if it was approved, would it be a one-time payment for connection, or would there be payment plan options available?
Yeah, so sometimes it is possible that we offer a one-time payment. I know municipalities have done that, especially with arenas and pools and things like that. They've given the option of a one-time payment so people can pay and not have to have that burden. That becomes complex, but it is possible, and that's an option. But otherwise, it will be through your property tax that you would be paying for the capital costs of your connection, likely, and the capital works. And Mark, correct me if maybe there are some things like a connection fee, the fee to actually make the physical connection, that is a one-time fee, or whether that's lumped into the overall borrowing.
Yeah, I think there's options there too, Russell. So we could probably look at whether that's included in taxes or paid up front. And then there's also an annual operating cost, which might be a user fee as opposed to a tax.
Right.
Okay. Similar to a water bill or something like that. Yeah.
Thanks.
So
Thanks, Mark.
Great. So I'm going to go back up and start tackling some of the ones that have been upvoted. So there are questions that a few people on the call have. So the first one is going back to the existing septic tanks and a question about whether or not we know how many would be required to be decommissioned, and whether or not there's a way that the CVRD could coordinate that decommissioning service for people to help reduce the cost over the area.
Okay, Mark or Derry, do you want to take that question on?
Yeah, so in terms of how many, once connected to a community sewer system, all of the existing septic systems should be decommissioned. And yeah, I think it's a good suggestion. The CVRD could definitely help to coordinate that, and knowing that there's a large scope of decommissioning work might attract for better rates from a contractor, that sort of thing. So I'll take note of this, and I think that's something that we can put our minds to.
There's a few questions through the Q&A window right now about timing. So I'm going to kind of bunch a few together because I think we can probably cover off a few of them at the same time. So questions like, what is the timeline to be able to hook up? How long is the proposed project projected to take? What is the timeline if we go ahead with the project? So Derry, I know you touched on that a little bit, but maybe we can just circle back and cover off some of those details.
Sure, yeah, so as I said previously, the timeline for construction, if we're successful in receiving the grant funding, would be completion in 2026. However, there will likely be some time following completion of those works where people will be kind of decommissioning their systems and hooking up to the collection and conveyance works.
And then is there an update about timelines for Union Bay Estates and construction there? Yeah, I'll leave that, stop there.
Sure. I think what I can say is this, is that Union Bay Estates is proceeding with their initial phases of development. It is likely that they will require, if this proceeds, and we were looking at the timelines that we've presented to you, they would likely have a temporary or a short-term solution for the initial phases of their development, and then eventually connection. Another thing we have to keep in mind too is that there's a critical mass. You need a certain amount of sewage to be effectively pumped through mains of these larger size to be effective. So existing residents brought on stream at the onset may help to provide that critical amount that makes it all work. But I think for Union Bay Estates, for instance, a 44 thereabouts lot subdivision, that is their initial phase, would probably need a temporary or short-term treatment works to eventually be connected when that critical mass with existing residents and their own development meets the needs, and the pipes and pumps are there in place to transfer the sewage.
The next question, maybe a bit more of a comment than a question, but I'm still going to present it because I think there's some information that can be shared. And the question is, why do we need a referendum on this? It is a public health issue.
Yeah, very good question. It's the Local Government Act. And the Local Government Act sets certain conditions on regional districts as to how to function and how we operate. And in particular, borrowing needs the approval, and the establishment of service area needs the consent of the landowners. There are certain types of services and circumstances in which that is not required, but for the most part, in order for us to establish a service and to undertake borrowing, we need the assent of the electors. And as I explained, it could be an alternate approval process, could be a referendum. I think generally what I'm hearing so far, but this could change, and it is at the direction of the directors. It's preferred to be a referendum on such an important matter. The Comox Valley needed a water treatment plant. We needed to treat our water, filter it or otherwise, in order to meet a regulatory requirement. The regulatory requirement had a deadline for us to put it in place. Even so, we still had to get approval of the electorate in order to borrow the money to undertake that project. So very high standard placed on regional districts to ensure that what they're doing meets with the public's expectations.
Thank you. The next upvoted question is, will there be phasing to the implementation of this? So which community would get connected first? Is it Royston or Union Bay?
Derry.
Yeah, so there certainly is likely to be phasing to the implementation of the project. We haven't yet determined which community or which communities might be part of the first phase, but that's all part of the analysis that we're currently undertaking, and that information will be presented at a later time for consideration by the community.
And when can residents expect for that elector assent process to happen, or the voting process?
And Derry, would you like to comment on that?
Yeah, so I think Russell talked a little bit about kind of the grant program and requirements in terms of kind of public approval. So given the grant program timelines, we'd be looking at likely a public assent process sometime in 2022.
And that kind of feeds actually into another question, which is, when could you expect to hear back the results of the grant application and the next steps? So
the application is due in January 2022, and generally it's around a 12-month timeline from kind of application to decision with these types of programs and projects.
I have a fairly specific question about Union Bay Estates that I'm just going to read because I don't want to misinterpret it. So if Kensington Island Properties is applying to dump 1,875 cubic meters per day into Hart Creek, how is that not having an outfall into Bain Sound? If successful, how is that contributing to your new sewage plans? And how is allowing the developer to install a standalone sewage system in keeping with the MDA?
the approval of treatment works or otherwise is through the Ministry of Environment. So any landowner or developer or local government that is planning a communal system of so many connections or more has to make application to the Ministry of Environment, and the Ministry of Environment will vet that application and approve of it, or otherwise. They have a process. It is somewhat different than the process that a local government must undertake in terms of getting approval, in which we are much more required or engaged with the local community, and there is public engagement in terms of what we propose. So there is a bit of a variance or a difference there. But we are working with Union Bay Estates to work collaboratively on a solution that will give them some assurance that the entire development can be provided with the best possible treatment works. And we feel that this solution going through the Comox Valley sewage treatment facility is the best and most viable option, and it certainly alleviates any potential for there to be outfalls either directly or indirectly into Bain Sound. But ultimately, the approval as to what is permitted will rest with the Ministry of Environment. The MDA, the Master Development Agreement that applies to Union Bay Estates, has the condition that the facility or treatment works that they provide, if they provide it, must be scalable. It must be available so that it can provide for the existing population. But the requirement is not that they build it at their cost to accommodate the existing population. So regardless of which way we go, that has to be done in a partnership or relationship to the benefit of both parties.
A couple questions circling back specifically to the grants. So one is, what grant program is it that is being applied to? And the other one is whether or not there might be grants available to individual homeowners if they are looking for support to make that connection when the time comes.
Jerry, can you explain the grant?
Yeah, so the program that we're applying for is called the Investing in Canada Infrastructure Program, and it's the environmental quality stream. And it is a federal and provincial funding program that is currently, I think, in its third intake.
And might there be individual grants available to individual property owners that could be pursued to help with the cost?
We're not knowledgeable at this time, but certainly if this project proceeds further and when it comes time for the imposition of costs on the property owners, we'll be mindful of what might be out there. One thing we would generally with some grants that applies is that there's stacking conditions, that the federal government, if they give a generous grant for the project from one stream, there's provisions where you can't apply other grants to accommodate other components of it. So we just need to be mindful of that. But we will definitely, as this project proceeds, if it does, we'll always be looking for those things that will provide benefit to you, the residents, and to diminish the costs that would be associated with your connection.
Going back to the timeline question again, and I know that we've talked about kind of all works being completed for 2026, but there's a couple questions specifically about when the switchover would happen, maybe for residents from the septic to the sewer service. So I'm not sure, Derry, if that is maybe the extent of detail that could be available at this point, but maybe does that connection happen kind of close to the end or sooner? There's just that specific step seems to be of interest to a few people who've posted questions.
Right. So I don't have a lot of detail on that yet at this point in time, but certainly we wouldn't be requiring people to decommission their septic systems until the system was completed and there was something for them to hook into.
What is the southern limit of the proposed service area? To the south. Is it the boundary of the settlement node?
Derry, are you able to comment? Do you want me to pull up the map?
Sure. Yeah, so so the southern boundary is Union Bay, and I think previously we'd talked about kind of servicing the core area of Union Bay, so the most kind of densely developed areas first, and then potentially in the future extending down to some of those less dense developments just south of kind of Union Bay proper. And I think that's likely likely how we're going to approach this next kind of scope as well, but certainly we'll be evaluating and looking into options there further.
Excellent. I am just mindful of the time because we're coming up to kind of our last minute of the hour that we had committed to taking from everybody. I know the team is available to stay on for another 10 minutes or so, and we do have about 10 more questions that are posted that we might be able to tackle if we keep moving forward. But I just want to recognize that there might be some people who have to drop off at this point. And so for those people, thank you very much for joining us. I'm going to quickly just share a screen that has the information about the website and the contact information. If you have any follow-up questions, and these remaining, any questions that we don't get to today, we will respond to and post at this website that's listed here. So, so please feel free to take note of it and share it. And if we lose you at this point, thanks again for being here. But the team will stay on and we will address a few more questions. So back to those. The question is whether or not houses, two specific areas actually, would houses in the Marine Drive area of Royston be included, and would houses on Briardale Road be included?
And Derry?
Yeah, so certainly those areas are kind of part of the overall service area that we're looking, or part of the overall area that we're looking to service. However, we're still determining kind of phasing options as we've discussed. So they will be serviced, but whether or not they'll be serviced in phase one, we have yet to determine.
Okay. And then a question that's been bumped up, so a few people have highlighted it, is particularly around kind of the failure of the last referendum and some of the issues that were a concern to people, particularly the cost. So the question is, what strategies will the CBRD be utilizing to bring education and information to the homeowners in order to ease those concerns in advance of an elector approval process this time, keeping in mind the reluctance to approve was based on many seniors not being able to come up with the financing and others who have recently invested in new systems?
Great. It's a great question, and it poses a question that I have of those that ask or are thinking about this, is that I ask you, please share with us how best for us to communicate to you on such matters as this moving forward. We want your ideas. Generally, between now and any referendum, we will undertake a series of meetings such as this, open houses, events like this that are online, and share that information. The website will be central in terms of our sharing of information. We will prompt or through our social media channels, updates or information that is available. More than likely, there would be a direct mail out to the service areas that are being proposed or affected in advance of any decision that would be required. And then there's the legislative requirements. A referendum has certain stipulations in terms of legal ads and promotion or otherwise in our local papers that would be done. So following our general procedures, it will include social media, our website, mail outs, open houses like this that you will see between now and any vote. But please, if we're missing the mark, or you think that there's a better way that we'll communicate with you and your neighborhood on this matter, give us that information. We would really appreciate it.
Great. That was kind of an additional comment in that as well, which was just wanting to make sure that there was information available to people who aren't participating digitally. So it's a good piece of feedback to consider moving forward. So another question is whether or not there are any preliminary ideas being discussed about how the cost for individual homeowners can be dealt with.
I turn to anybody that can respond to this differently than I may have answered the question on cost previously. Does Anybody have any input?
My read on this, how it's a little bit different maybe than the other cost questions, is just that is kind of, are there any initiatives or things that the CBRD could do to help reduce the impact of that cost on the homeowners?
Okay, I think Director Arbor has a comment.
Great.
In the big picture, I think we're reducing the cost a lot by not proposing a plant in Area A that we own and operate, but basically hook into the municipal system. The second is the funding, is really getting the grant funding. But as Russell explained earlier, and Mark as well, at some point there's a community decision to see if the overall cost picture is deemed affordable for all. And I did like the suggestion earlier, you know, is there something we can do for low income? Typically in those projects, the answer is no. Everybody ends up paying kind of the same rate. But I'm glad a couple of people asked today, because I think the team heard that, and we can look into options anyways.
Great. So a question about shellfish, the shellfish industry. So the comment is that, you know, they heard during the presentation that the shellfish industry is one of the many groups interested in seeing a solution here for wastewater treatment. So if this project goes ahead, will that be a trigger that starts a renewed push for more shellfish farms potentially in the Gartley Beach and Kilmarnock area?
Okay, I wonder if Alana, or even Director Arbor, through some of the committees or otherwise that you're involved in, might have a response to this. Director Arbor.
Okay, I was waiting to see if Alana went. Yeah, so I just happened to be the coastal rep for all communities on the coast to DFO on shellfish issues, and we just happened to have we have 2 meetings a year, and one was just last week, where you know, the shellfish growers were there, as well as industry representatives, and they talked for 20 minutes about and putting pressure on me around addressing septic and sewage in around Bain Sound, as Russell said, which produces 50% of the product. They deal increasingly, well, they have a ton of pressures, but they have norovirus, all these different things, all these different challenges, a lot of closures. And Comox First Nation, by the way, was also consistently putting pressure on this very issue. I don't expect that this would lead to more licenses. That these are pretty separate processes in terms of tenure applications. But what it would do is basically ensure more reliability in the quality of their product, and concerns around all these closures that they're facing with. And so, you know, it goes both ways at those meetings. We were successful in getting DFO to change their regulation. In a couple of years, all gear will be tracked back and to the company that produces it. So it's good. We're pushing each other. They're like, please address your septic, and we're like, please address your garbage issue. And we're like, if everybody does their job well, everybody benefits.
Great. I'm going to go back to the map. We've had a specific question about Roy Creek Road and whether or not that is included in the proposed service area.
And Derry, can you comment?
Yeah, so I think generally, I believe Roy Creek Road is included in the proposed service area. However, like I have said before, we're still kind of determining the phasing of the project and which areas would be included in this first phase. And certainly, I think lots of questions around who's included and who's not. And we will be including more detailed maps in upcoming engagement over the coming months.
Great, that jumps ahead and answers another question, specifically requesting a more detailed map. So just recognizing that question, and that, yes, there will be more detailed information available in the months to come. I think we have kind of time for a few more questions. It looks like we're going to have to leave a few to be able to be addressed afterwards, but I'm going to try and tackle 2 more. We had 2 more that were bumped up, so we'll tackle those and then we'll have to part ways. But the next question is, how would it be decided about how individual homes connect into the sewer service? So each property obviously would be quite different. Who makes that plan or decision?
Jerry?
Yeah, I think these types of detailed questions are what we're going to need to address through the detailed design stage of the project. So not something we're really able to answer at this point.
Okay. And then a question about people who maybe need to be doing something with their sewer systems sooner rather than later, and the concern that the 2026 might be more of a delay. So would there be expectations for those upgrades to be completed if this upgrade is kind of on the horizon, or potential for accommodation due to the pending new service?
I wondered, Nancy, would you be able to address that if there's a septic system of concern at this time, the potential of this proceeding and somebody faced with upgrades?
Yeah, there's definitely some options. You know, if there's a failing system, you know, and you're 6 months out from a connection, then, you know, you have, you know, some limited options that aren't always fabulous, but they're kind of Band-Aid solutions. So you could do like a pump and haul type of solution. You know, until you're actually connected, the sewerage system regulations apply. So there isn't allowance within that legislation to say, unless you're about to connect within X time frame. But you know, if there's other accommodations that can be made, other system options, you know, definitely we can look at that. And that you would need to talk to an approved person under the regulations to help you guide you through that process.
Okay, so we're at our 10 minutes over. I see a few questions remaining, but as I said, we will respond to those and post that to the project webpage. We do have a quick poll we're going to post for those who are still with us. It just asks a couple questions about how you heard about this webinar and where you're joining us from, which is really helpful to us as we plan engagement moving forward. There's 2 questions, so you might need to scroll down to be able to see both of them. They're not mandatory, of course, but if you don't mind taking a moment to fill those in, we really appreciate it. And while that's up there, I'm just going to remind everyone that we're hosting an in-person open house that goes over this same information on Thursday afternoon at the Union Bay Community Hall from 3:30 to 5:30 p.m. So please feel free to relay that information to friends or neighbors who might be interested in learning about this using that tool. The mask will be required as well as vaccine passports. So just a notice about that as well and what to expect. But also this video will also be shared to the project webpage. I will just share that screen one more time so that you can see that web address and make note of it, because that's where we'll be able to post the follow-up information after we wrap up today. In the next day or two, we'll have it up there. So with that, I will say our thank yous very much to everybody who joined us today for giving us some time this afternoon to learn more about the proposal. Thank you to our presenters and our panelists for working so hard through that Q&A session and for providing the update. I hope you've all gotten a lot more information and feel a bit more informed about the current process. And we hope to see you again and talk to you again soon. So have a great rest of your day, and thank you everyone for being here.
Thank you, panelists. You can exit at any time now.
Can we do a debrief right here, just quickly?
We can, just a moment, please.